There is a moment, you know it the second it happens, where someone says something cutting, or dismissive, or quietly cruel, and your whole body reacts before your mind does. Your jaw tightens. Your heart rate climbs. And in that half second, you have two roads in front of you. One road leads to a reaction you'll replay in your head for the rest of the day. The other road leads to something so calm, so unexpected, that the other person doesn't know what to do with it. Most people take the first road. Almost no one takes the second. And the ones who do, the ones who've learned how to respond instead of react, they carry a kind of quiet power that toxic people can sense but can never quite touch. Here's the strange part. Toxic behavior isn't really about you. It never was. It's a performance that needs an audience, and it needs that audience to play a very specific role, the role of the wounded, the flustered, the reactive. The moment you stop playing that role, the whole performance collapses. Not because you fought back harder, but because you simply stopped feeding it. And that's what we're going to explore today, 7 responses, 7 small shifts in language and posture, that don't just protect you from toxic people, they quietly take all the power out of the interaction. By the end of this, you'll understand not just what to say, but why these responses work on a deeper psychological level, and how learning them will change the way you carry yourself in every difficult conversation for the rest of your life. Let's start with something most of us were never taught, the difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction is automatic. It comes from an old part of the brain, the part that was built for physical danger, a predator in the grass, a sudden threat. That part of you doesn't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a passive-aggressive comment from a coworker. It just knows, threat detected, defend now. A response, on the other hand, comes from a slower, wiser part of you, the part that can pause, observe, and choose. The gap between those two things, the reaction and the response, is where your entire personal power lives. Toxic people are experts, often without even realizing it, at collapsing that gap. They say something designed to trigger the old brain, the reactive brain, because a person operating from that place is easy to manipulate, easy to provoke, easy to make look unstable while they themselves stay composed. So the real skill isn't cleverness. It isn't winning the argument. It's widening that gap. Even by half a second. That half second is everything. Now, let's talk about the first response, because it might be the most important one, and it's also the one people resist the most. The first response is silence, but not just any silence. Not the silence of being frozen, or shocked, or too scared to speak. A different kind of silence. A deliberate one. You let a pause sit in the air, longer than feels comfortable, before you say anything at all. Try this the next time someone says something designed to unsettle you. Don't rush to fill the space. Just look at them. Breathe. Let 3, maybe 4 full seconds pass. To you, it will feel like an eternity. To them, it will feel like the ground shifting under their feet. Because toxic behavior depends on a rhythm, a quick jab, an immediate flinch, back and forth, like a rally in a tennis match. The moment you refuse to return the ball right away, the entire rhythm breaks. They don't know if you're offended, amused, unbothered, or simply not interested in playing. That uncertainty is deeply uncomfortable for someone whose whole strategy depends on your predictable reaction. Silence isn't weakness here. It's the most controlled thing in the room. There's a quiet truth in this: the person who needs to speak first, who needs to fill every gap, who needs the last word, that person is often revealing how much control they actually don't have. Real composure doesn't need to prove itself immediately. It can wait. The second response is a simple, almost embarrassingly plain question: what do you mean by that? This sounds too easy to actually work, but it's one of the most disarming tools available, because toxic comments almost always rely on implication rather than direct statement. A backhanded compliment. A sarcastic remark wrapped in a smile. A comment that technically sounds fine but carries an undertone meant to sting. These comments are built to be deniable. If you flinch or get upset, the person can say, "I was just joking," or, "Why are you being so sensitive?" But when you calmly ask them to clarify, not with anger, not with sarcasm, just genuine, flat curiosity, you force the comment out of the shadows and into the light. You make them either explain the cruelty out loud, which most people are unwilling to do, or backtrack entirely. Either way, you win, because you haven't reacted emotionally, and you've made them responsible for their own words. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it points to something larger about human nature. Most unkindness thrives in ambiguity. It survives because no one names it directly. The instant you ask someone to clarify what they meant, you remove the fog they were hiding in. Some people, when asked to clarify, actually apologize, because they didn't fully realize how it sounded until they had to say it plainly. Others get flustered, because the entire comment was built to operate in the space between words, not in the words themselves. Either way, you've taken the exchange out of their control and placed it gently back in yours. The third response is one line, and it might be the single most versatile phrase you'll ever learn. That's an interesting way to see it. Notice what this sentence does. It doesn't agree. It doesn't disagree. It doesn't defend, explain, or justify. It simply acknowledges that a statement was made, without accepting it as true, and without engaging in the emotional tug-of-war the other person was hoping for. This is powerful because toxic exchanges often depend on you accepting their framing of reality. If someone says, "You always overreact," and you immediately start explaining all the reasons you don't always overreact, you've just accepted their frame. You're now debating on their terms, defending a version of yourself they created. But if you simply say, "That's an interesting way to see it," you've stepped outside their frame entirely. You haven't confirmed it. You haven't fought it. You've simply observed it, the way you'd observe weather, noted, but not absorbed. There's a subtle wisdom hidden here, one that applies far beyond difficult conversations. Not everything said about you has to become part of your self-concept. Someone's opinion of you is data about them, their mood, their perspective, their own unresolved history, far more often than it's an accurate reflection of who you actually are. You're allowed to hear something and simply let it pass through, rather than let it land and take root. The fourth response requires a bit more inner steadiness, because it involves genuinely detaching your sense of self-worth from the moment. The response itself is simple: I hear you, and I see it differently. But what makes it work isn't the words. It's the tone behind them, calm, unhurried, almost gentle. This response works because it refuses the invitation to escalate. Toxic interactions often function like an auction, where each person raises the emotional stakes a little higher, a sharper comment, a colder tone, a more pointed jab, until someone finally breaks. When you say, "I hear you, and I see it differently," you're stepping out of the auction altogether. You're not raising the bid. You're not lowering it either. You're simply closing the auction house. And here's something worth noticing about why this feels so hard to do in the moment. Most of us were raised, without even realizing it, to believe that disagreement requires defense, that being misunderstood is a kind of danger, that if we don't correct someone's wrong impression of us immediately, it will somehow become permanently true. But it won't. People's misunderstandings of you say far more about their own limitations of perception than about your actual character. You don't need every single person to see you accurately. You only need to see yourself accurately. And once you know who you are with a quiet certainty, someone else's distorted opinion becomes almost weightless. It might sting for a moment. But it doesn't have the power to define you unless you let it. The fifth response is less about what you say and more about what you refuse to say, and it might be the hardest one of all to practice, because it goes against every social instinct we have. It's simply this: you don't explain yourself. Toxic people frequently ask questions that aren't really questions, they're traps. Why would you do that? Why are you like this? What's your problem? These aren't genuine inquiries looking for information. They're designed to put you on the defensive, to make you scramble for justification, because a person who is busy explaining and justifying themselves is a person who has already, subtly, accepted blame. Here's the deeper insight worth carrying with you. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every accusation deserves a defense. This might sound counterintuitive, almost impolite, in a culture that tells us to always explain ourselves, to always be transparent, to always have a reason ready. But explaining yourself to someone who isn't operating in good faith doesn't create understanding, it creates more ammunition. You can simply say, "I don't think I need to explain that," and let the silence do the rest. This isn't arrogance. It's boundary. There's a quiet, grounded confidence in realizing that your worth isn't up for debate, isn't something you need to argue for, isn't a case you need to win in front of a jury that was never impartial to begin with. The sixth response is a shift in perspective more than a specific phrase, though it often comes out as something like, "I understand this is hard for you." It sounds almost too generous, especially when you're the one being hurt. But this response draws from something deeper, the recognition that toxic behavior is very rarely about confidence. It's almost always rooted in some kind of pain, insecurity, unresolved fear, or a wound that was never properly tended to. This doesn't excuse the behavior. It doesn't mean you have to stay in the conversation, or the relationship, or accept mistreatment because someone is struggling. But there's something quietly liberating about seeing cruelty for what it usually is, not strength, but a leak. A person who feels genuinely secure rarely needs to diminish someone else to feel taller. When you can hold that understanding, not as an excuse for them, but as clarity for yourself, the sting of their words changes shape. It stops feeling like a verdict on your worth and starts looking like a symptom of their own unhealed places. This shift doesn't mean you become a doormat, endlessly absorbing other people's pain because you understand where it comes from. It means you stop taking their behavior personally, because you finally see it isn't really about you, it's a reflection they're projecting outward because they haven't figured out how to sit with what's inside them. The seventh response is the quietest of all, and honestly, it might be the most transformative, because it's not really about the other person at all. It's a simple internal question you ask yourself in the middle of a tense moment: will this matter in 5 years? Sometimes the answer is yes. Some conflicts genuinely matter, genuinely deserve your energy and attention. But far more often, especially with the small daily frictions, the passive comments, the minor jabs from people who thrive on getting under your skin, the honest answer is no. It won't matter in 5 years. It probably won't matter in 5 days. And when you can access that wider perspective in real time, something remarkable happens: your entire nervous system downshifts. The stakes shrink back down to their actual size instead of the artificially inflated size your instinctive reaction gave them. This is where an old but often overlooked truth becomes useful: most of what disturbs us isn't the event itself, but the meaning we immediately attach to it. Someone makes a snide comment, and within milliseconds, your mind has already built a story. They don't respect me, they think I'm foolish, this reflects something true and permanent about my worth. But that story is not the event. That story is your interpretation, built at lightning speed, almost entirely without your conscious permission. And if you can pause, even briefly, before accepting that story as fact, you get to choose a different one. Maybe the story is, this person is having a hard day. Maybe it's, this says more about their character than mine. Maybe it's simply, this is not important enough to cost me my peace. All three are more accurate, more useful, and far more available to you than you might currently believe. Now, here's where all 7 of these responses actually connect, because on the surface they might look like separate tactics, different lines for different situations. But underneath, they all draw from the exact same well. Every single one of them is really an exercise in ego regulation. Not ego in the sense of arrogance, but ego in the older, deeper sense, the part of you that feels it must win, must correct, must be understood, must have the last word, must never appear weak, must never let an insult go unanswered. That part of you feels enormous in the moment. It feels like protecting it is protecting yourself. But it's usually the opposite. The more that part of you demands to be defended at every turn, the more power you actually give away, because you've let someone else's careless words dictate your emotional state, your tone, your next several hours, sometimes your next several days. True strength rarely looks like a sharp comeback. It looks remarkably plain. It looks like someone who heard something unkind and simply didn't take the bait. Who stayed level. Who didn't need to prove anything, because they weren't operating from a place of lack in the first place. There's an old but often overlooked distinction between reacting from fear and responding from clarity. Fear reacts because it feels threatened that if it doesn't defend itself right now, in this exact moment, something essential will be lost: reputation, respect, control, safety. Clarity, on the other hand, responds because it understands something fear cannot see, that most threats to your peace are not actually threats to your worth. They're just noise. Uncomfortable noise, sometimes, but noise all the same. And once you can consistently tell the difference between noise and something that genuinely requires your attention, you stop wasting your energy on battles that were never worth fighting to begin with. It's also worth naming something honestly. None of this means becoming numb, or pretending things don't hurt, or performing a kind of hollow calm while you're actually falling apart inside. That's not composure, that's suppression, and suppression always finds a way to leak out eventually, usually onto people who didn't deserve it. Real composure allows you to feel the sting fully, privately, honestly, and still choose your response with a clear head. You're allowed to go home and feel frustrated. You're allowed to sit with the discomfort of being misunderstood. But in the actual moment, in front of the person who's trying to provoke you, you get to choose what you hand them. And when you consistently hand them calm instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, quiet instead of qualification, something shifts, not just in how they treat you, but in how you see yourself. You start to trust your own steadiness. You start to realize that your peace doesn't have to be negotiated with every difficult person who crosses your path. It's yours. It was always yours. No one can take what you refuse to hand over. There's one more layer to this worth sitting with, because it might be the most quietly powerful realization of all. Toxic people, on some level, are often testing to see how much space they can take up in your inner world, how much rent-free real estate they can occupy in your thoughts, your reactions, your sense of self. And every time you respond from that grounded, unshaken place, you're not just handling one conversation. You're training your own mind. You're teaching yourself, one interaction at a time, that you don't need to be at the mercy of other people's moods, other people's insecurities, other people's need to make someone else feel small so they can feel large for a moment. That training compounds. The first time you use one of these responses, it might feel forced, unnatural, even a little uncomfortable, like trying on a jacket that doesn't quite fit yet. But the 10th time, the 20th time, something changes. It stops being a technique you're consciously reaching for, and it starts becoming simply who you are. A person who isn't easily rattled. A person whose center doesn't move just because someone else is trying to shake it. And maybe that's the real goal here, not becoming someone who has clever comebacks for every situation, but becoming someone who genuinely doesn't need them anymore, because so little actually has the power to disturb that inner stillness in the first place. The 7 responses we walked through today, the pause, the clarifying question, the neutral acknowledgement, the calm disagreement, the refusal to over-explain, the quiet understanding of someone else's pain, and the 5-year question, none of them are really about winning against toxic people. They're about something much larger than that. They're about refusing to let someone else's chaos become your chaos. About refusing to let a stranger's bad day, or a coworker's insecurity, or a family member's old, unresolved wound become the thing that steers your entire emotional state. The people who master this, who can stand in the middle of an unkind comment and simply not be moved by it, they're not cold, and they're not indifferent. They've just done the quiet, unglamorous work of separating their worth from other people's opinions, their peace from other people's provocations, their sense of self from other people's noise. And once that separation is real, once it's not just an idea you've heard but something you've actually practiced, you find that toxic people, in a strange way, start to lose interest in you. Not because you've become harder or colder, but because you've stopped being useful to their pattern. The performance needs a reactive audience, and you've quietly stepped off the stage. So here's the small, simple truth to carry with you: the next time someone says something designed to unsettle you, you don't have to win. You don't have to correct them. You don't even have to be right in their eyes. You just have to stay steady long enough for their words to lose their momentum, and let your calm do what no argument ever could. If this gave you something to think about, take a moment to subscribe, so more of these ideas find their way to you, and drop a comment below with which of these 7 responses you're going to try first. I'd genuinely like to know.